Let's before we wrap this episode up, we should talk a little more about the specifics of what's going on over there that we, at least as far as we understand it, because we tend to think of things again in terms that we're familiar with, right? We hear a little bit about what's going on and we relate it to like Nazi Germany or the Gulag or something. And in a way it is, it's softer power than that, but in a way it's so much darker and more insidious, I think. Because, the Chinese have figured out that you don't have to go in and kill millions of people. You don't have to do that.
What I was talking about earlier of, hey, death by 1,000 cuts, yes, they figured that out.
There is and death by demoralization, that's a huge part of the process. If you look at, they talk a lot about the mass surveillance system over there. And I don't think people really fully understand how pervasive it is. It's not just that every square inch of the streets and everything are covered by cameras with facial recognition, although they are. Everybody's homes have a camera right over the door. Any door, if there's two doors in your house, they're both covered directly by surveillance cameras. You look at Uyghur neighborhoods, and every door has a surveillance camera assigned to it specifically. And these all have facial recognition. All of that information, so they know who comes and goes, where everybody travels. Everybody is tracked. Everybody's required to carry things that track them. They track all of this movement. They see how many people come into your house, who you've met with. All of this is fed into, a computer system that is, they've got powerful AI now that is, using all of that data to develop models for behavior and predict radicalization. And this is one of the just crazy things about it. It's straight up out of Minority Report, where the AI predicts that based on who this person's been talking to and some of the things they've been purchasing and their patterns of behavior and movement and so forth, that this person's going down the path of radicalization.
Pick 'em
bag
up.
over your head. You're disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to you, and maybe they'll see you in a couple of years. And you go into a re-education camp. There's a commissar assigned to every Uyghur household. That commissar, is a political officer, from the Communist Party, can knock on that door anytime they want, enter the house, inspect the house, question the people, talk to the kids, separate everybody, search the place. They have full control, as if it's an occupation, basically. And they spend a lot of time. All the kids are forced to go to kids aren't allowed to attend mosques until they're adults. A lot of mosques have been closed and bulldozed and things like that, but kids aren't allowed to attend mosque until they're grown up. And the kids are required to go to these Communist Party public schools that indoctrinate them against Uyghur culture, against Islam and Islamic culture. The commissars this is one of the things you hear about over and over, is they'll come in and they'll mistreat the parents in front of the kids to kind of break that authority. You're a father of a family and there's somebody who can walk into your house and just mistreat you. It's kind of hard to go tell your kids that you got to go do your chores later that day, and then they'll take the kids into a separate area and they'll give them candy and they'll, talk bad about Uyghur culture and Islam, and they'll tell them about the glories of Chinese communism and things like that. That's dark. That's something. That's something that is being carried out by people who understand psychology very well, and again are not targeting. It's all. It comes down to like what Foucault wrote about discipline and punishment in the modern age. Where for a long time we were like, what do we do to this person? Rip their eyeballs out, cut their tongue off, and castrate them and throw it in a well. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, we don't target the body so much. We target the mind and the soul. We know that we can put you in solitary confinement until you're hearing voices. We know that we can smash up your identity and, break up your family and your ethnic neighborhood where you have a sense of community, and put you in a block apartment after 3 years in a re-education camp. And yeah, you're not a gung-ho, yay communist, but you're not going to be a problem either.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this on one of the earlier podcasts, just the methodology that the communists began to use. And it's the Korean War where it started to shine through. Mm-hmm. Because in World War II, when the Nazis when the Japanese captured an American, they were getting tortured and killed, but with no other reason other than to torture and kill them. The Germans were going to keep you in prison until the war was over. But the Korean War, we're going to change your mind. And they had this deal. This is what they were trying to do. And that's what they're trying to do here. And like you said, they've gotten, I wonder what you tell me. You said it's scary, and I have to agree with you. You tell me what's more scary. Having your being tortured, physically tortured, where you have to suffer abuse, or having someone convince your children that they shouldn't respect and admire you and your culture and where you came from and your family. I'll tell you, you asked me that question, I will sign me up for torture rather than lose the family connection.
The torture is like maybe more, maybe more terrifying, but it's a situation where you know what you're facing, and it's a matter of pain and endurance and suffering and so forth, as opposed to, it's like, would you rather have me take a sledgehammer and smash your hands, both of your hands with them? Or would you rather be in the grip of a horrible, horrible depression for the next 5 years? And it's like, there's a lot of people who would be like, I do not want to get my hand smashed by a sledgehammer. Sign me up for depression. And then after 6 months, they'd be like, I should have picked the hammer. And and part of the what makes it so scary as well is I think the Chinese know perfectly well that if they were gunning down hordes of, Uyghur civilians or shoving them all into gas ovens, that wouldn't be tolerated. There would be consequences for that.
They know the ROE.
And that there probably are not going to be
They know the ROE. It's like the insurgents in Iraq. They knew the ROE. They know they can't walk down the street with an AK-47. Yeah. So they walk down the street with a grenade in their pocket. They have that AK-47 stashed somewhere. They know the ROE, and they know what's going to bring attention to them. And so they're flying underneath the radar. But what's scary about that is it's more effective. What they're doing is more effective in many ways because it's like instead of just ripping out the weeds, you're salting the earth. Like nothing's going to grow there anymore. Yeah. You remove the roots completely, and you destroy the foundation of that culture. That's what's happening.
And that kind of thing is something that takes centuries, millennia to grow together. It's not something that you just you can just regrow or put together overnight. When it's gone, it's gone. And, I think maybe that's the last thing I'll say about it is that this is really, this kind of thing, when this pops up, it should really be a reminder to us as a country why we have got to hold ourselves to a high standard, where we cannot be going around, engaging in acts of belligerence toward other countries, for example, on anything but like true premises. Like that's a starter. Like, because when we don't have a pristine record, I mean, when we try to raise a coalition of people who are going to get together and put pressure on China, like how seriously can they really take us? How seriously can the Chinese take us? I mean, I think the Chinese probably know a lot of our history better than most of the American public, and it's a reason why we've really got to hold ourselves to a high standard if we want to have anything to say when other countries are doing things like this.
Yeah, you have to hold yourself to a high standard in how you act today. You have to hold yourself, and I'm talking as an American, have to hold ourselves to a high standard as to how we account for our past. And that doesn't mean that we erase it, right? That doesn't mean that we eliminate it. That doesn't mean, when we talk about the communists coming in and saying to the kid, hey, your dad, whatever shortfall your dad has, your dad cheated on your wife or on your mom, your dad hasn't paid his taxes, your dad didn't do well, he's not as smart, he's not a very smart man, he didn't do well on the state tests that we gave him, whatever things they're going to say to undermine that family unit. Well, you can do the same thing with America. You can say, well, America did this, America did that. And those things are true. But what you don't do is you don't cast away your father or your mother because they're imperfect. You cannot do that. If you do that, you're throwing away your culture, and you will end up in a place where things really unravel.